My name's John Anderson. This is my wife, Lana. I have PKD. PKD runs in my family. My grandpa had PKD. I knew I would cry. My grandpa passed away at 24. My mom passed away at 36 at home one night from complications from PKD, and I was 11. When my mom was still alive, I passed my first kidney stone when I was about 6. And so my mom knew that I was on that journey too, but the official diagnosis for me came later. I was in my high school years and had got a kidney stone stuck between the kidney and the bladder. And when that took place, you couldn't drain the kidney, and in those days there was no really option other than if it doesn't pass, they kind of threatened you. We're going to do surgery, and away we go. So when I was in high school, I did have that surgery, and then that's when they said, man, you got some big kidneys, and you're on that journey. And so went throughout my teenage years just fine. I met Lana in my early 20s. I told her I had a disease, but I looked normal. I looked as normal as I could. And so, I didn't look like Brad Pitt when this thing started, so my expectations had been low. But anyway, I knew I was on that journey. I told her, she understood somewhat, I think. And we went through our 20s, got married. We got married, and everything worked well. Got up into my late 30s, and the job I had, I've worked for the same company for a little over 35 years. I traveled all the time and traveled in North America, and went to Canada, was working on a job in Canada, and I took Lana with me. And they'd always told me, when you get to the end of renal failure, you kind of go along steady, and then all of a sudden, boy, once something happens, and it ramps up and you're on that journey. And so that's exactly what happened. Woke up in Canada one morning. I knew I was in terrible pain, couldn't hardly stand up straight. And Kevin, the guy I worked with up there, I went ahead and went to work because I'm not the smartest guy. And so I went ahead and went to work, and I couldn't even stand up straight. They took me over to emergency care, and the emergency care said, we don't handle that. You take him to the hospital. Took me to the hospital, and they did some testing and said, man, you got some massive kidneys. They were excited. They said, man, like calling people in to look at it, said, man, look at these pictures. But they filled me with morphine and said, stabilize yourself and get home back to the United States as fast as you can. So we came home, had the kidney, did my blood work, did my testing, and they said, you're on that ramp now. And so I started down that end-stage renal disease and struggled with that for probably 4 years, and then had a transplant. Now I'm 18 years out now with a transplant. So.
Probably after we attended our first PKD conference.
And that had to be over 20 years ago.
Yeah. And that's when we decided.
Yeah. We didn't know any different. We thought, well, we'll do hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. I was against a transplant. I didn't want a transplant. And of course, this was 20 years ago, and I just didn't want it. And then we went to the first PKD convention, and they said, this is the way you got to go. This is, these are your options, your longevity, your life, quality of life. And so we decided to go down that path and to support the foundation. When I die, the disease will die in my family because there's nobody else beyond me that will have it. So we're not doing it to try to save a child or a grandchild from the effects of the disease. We're basically
doing it to help stop the disease for others.
Yeah, it's a way to honor my mom too. As he said, as the speaker said last evening, this isn't your grandpa's PKD. This is our generation's. And my mom had zero choice. I saw, as a little boy, I saw the effects of it in my family, and I saw how my mom struggled. I have a sister, an older sister, but she didn't get the genetics. And so she doesn't have it, but I saw how it destroyed my mom. And, she had no choice. She was a single parent in the early 60s, and she had absolutely zero options. So if we can provide and help other people have an option or, things of that nature, then that's what we do it for. I don't know if there was even much discussion on it other than it was just, we wanted to be able to support when we could, and we wanted to be able to, and a lot of those things too helped us, because when you look at some of the ways that the foundation does things, I guess the thing is just like this morning, when the comment this morning was hope. You got to have hope in this journey. We didn't choose this path, it was chosen for us, if you will, and we're in this, Now Lana, she chose it because she decided to marry me after she knew I had the disease.
Well, I didn't totally understand the disease. I still would have married him, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think either of us really understood totally
Yeah.
because he was healthy then. I mean, he seemed healthy then.
Yeah. And so, and 18 years, it hasn't been without its problems health-wise. We've had a heart attack, and now it's 18 years. We had the widowmaker heart attack. We had a torn esophagus. We've had other things, but there's somebody you can call. You're not in this alone, and to not be in it alone, you have to have money. You got to have resources. You got to be able to get out there and do those things. It's a personal decision. You have to think about it. But, last night's speaker was so interesting. It's like, hey, we're not asking you to support my drinking habit. We're not asking you to send me to Costa Rica on vacation. We got dealt this disease through our parents, through our family, or for the odd case where you just get that mutation, later in life. But this is a situation where we didn't do anything to get this, but we're trying to figure out. Of course, I have the adult version of it, and I never fathered any children. But the first year we came, and there was a lot of young parents there that had children that had AR PKD. And I just couldn't imagine what it would be like to have those little children. And we had some friends that had a newborn pass away here in Denver probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the little boy that was born, Josiah.
He was born without kidneys.
And it's like, yeah, he was a normal little boy. Looked so wonderful. And we got a chance to meet him and spend a little time with him. But again, it takes money. It takes a lot of money to find a cure. It takes a lot of money to find options. And so, if you can and you can support these things, and it will vary throughout the course of your life, but if you can, it's a wonderful investment. Well, and I'll say one more thing because I need to honor this. My kidney came from a guy at work, and it was one of those situations where the company that I worked for, they said, hey, we're going to send you down to Texas. I live in Wyoming, and they said, we're going to send you down to Texas, go down to this company and take a look at their technology. If you like it, don't get all excited and giddy and everything, because we may try to buy the technology or buy the company. but go down and take a look at it. I got down to the plant about 10 o'clock in the morning, and that gentleman, he's a chemical engineer, we just got along wonderful. I mean, it was just like we had never met before, but as soon as we met, we just got along. And we were still there in the plant like 2 o'clock the next morning. We'd worked all day through the night into the next morning. Finally, the people that owned the company came out and said, you guys got to go home. You got to go to a hotel. You can't do this. So him and I just got along. His name was Ted, and we just got along real well. And we didn't buy the company, but we did a lot of jobs together. And we did different things that were across the country, and I would see him. And it was just a casual conversation, a casual friendship, a business relationship. See him 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. And during this journey, my kidney function started to really taper off. And I knew I was in trouble. Got down to 20%, went on the kidney transplant list. Things just weren't going good. But I didn't want to go on dialysis. And so through diet and exercise, you know, you can kind of last a little while longer. Well, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, working that week out of town, and I didn't sleep much. A lot of pain that evening, and got up the next morning, checked my email, and there was an email from Ted that said, hey, I had a dream about you last night. I hope you don't take that wrong, but I dreamt about you last night, and he said, are you okay? And so, you know, I emailed him back and said, I got a little kidney problem going on, and I had a little trouble last night, but I'm doing good. As soon as he got that email, he called me on the cell phone and said, what's going on with the kidney thing? And I said, told him a little bit. I said, well, I got polycystic kidney disease. And I said, I'm getting down to the end. And I said, you know, it's just getting a little tougher. And he said, just out of the blue, I'll give you a kidney. And I blew him off. I said, it doesn't work like that, Ted. You just can't, you know, hey, you know, are you free on Wednesday? I'll come by and give you a kidney. I said, it doesn't work like that. And he said, I'm serious. He said, now let me explain. And we're both the same age. We were in our early 40s. And he said, let me explain. He said, all my life, every dream has been black and white. All my life. He said, last night, he said, my dream was you and I were together, and he said, you and I were together, and he said, you were dying on the floor. And he said, the minute that I kneeled down and I touched you, color came across you and the whole room, and everything was in color. He said, so I'm the guy. And I still blew him off. I said, well, it is not that easy to give away a kidney. And I said, you really got to think about it. I said, that's your health savings account. He said, I'm serious, John. When the day comes, I'm the guy. So over the next year or so, I'd see him on different jobs. He never said a single word in front of anybody else. We'd be together on something, and everybody else would be gone. We'd be working on something. He'd just say, I'm taking good care of that kidney. As soon as you're ready, I'm the guy. Well, you just don't really understand how bad you feel when you're trying to ride that kidney function down less than 20%. Lana did, and I have an aunt, and so Lana, my aunt, turned me in to the University of Colorado Hospital and said, he's a lot sicker than he thinks, and he needs to get this transplant. And so I had 6 friends come forward to be tested as a donor for a kidney transplant. One by one, everybody was eliminated but Ted. And so at the end, you know, Ted lived down in Texas. I did my testing here in Denver through the University of Colorado Hospital. He calls me, he says, let's pray. When we did the antigen test, let's pray that I'm a good match. And it came back, and he matched me like a brother. Had to transplant on a Thursday, and this is something else. In those days, University of Colorado said, you bring your own kidney, you can have a transplant any day you want as long as it's Thursday. And so you get a pick. Yeah, you bring your own parts, you can have it, but you got to have it on a Thursday. And so we picked May 12th. We picked May 12th as the day. I had some stuff I wanted to do in my life, and so did Ted. And so he came up to Denver, and we had to transplant on that Thursday. I went back to work on Monday. He drove back to Texas on that Tuesday morning. And, it's just been wonderful. But my aunt was adamant. God knew that you needed that kidney. And so all those years ago, he had God introduced you to Ted, and this is all part of God's plan. And so, you don't argue with your aunt. You say, I understand. Yeah, Auntie Marilyn, I really understand. Well, anyway, after my transplant, I ended up getting shingles because I had too much immune suppressant medication. And so I got shingles, and so we're trying to figure out if I had chickenpox as a little boy. Well, there was nobody to ask. All my family's gone. And so I thought, well, in those days, your mom had a baby book for you. Remember, it was a hardbound book, and she taped your tooth in there and all that kind of stuff. So we find my baby book, and we're looking through there to see if I had shingles or chickenpox as a little boy, and out drops this little card, like a little postcard in an envelope. And when it drops out of there, we pick it up, and it's actually my baby dedication card. Now you have to remember, my transplant was on May 12th. And so when I picked out that little baby dedication, my birthday's in March, and so I picked up that little baby dedication card and pulled it out, and my parents had dedicated me to God on May 12th of 1962. 41 years later to the day, God gave me a kidney. And as she said this morning in the keynote, it's the gift of time.
Yeah.
It's the gift of time. In those 18 years, I've had 18 more years with Lana. We've seen the birth of 3 granddaughters. You just have more time. You have time with the ones you love. So if you're considering giving a gift and you can give somebody else time, you can't buy time, but you can make arrangements that you may have time. So that's why and we've been to, I think, 4 of these over the last 20 years. And this one here has just been wonderful, the conference. Complications long term. Right now in my life, we're thinking about I still have my 2 native kidneys plus my 3rd one. And the 2 native ones are massive now. 18 years later, that they haven't shrank. I'm one of those ones where they keep going. And so we're thinking about having those taken out. And so gave them some good information here to make a decision. So.